Line up in the morning and stare at your shoes, like meat for a gaffer to pick and to choose. With a tap on the shoulder, he gives you the sign. You can hump call all day for 2 shillings and 9. I'm telling you, Jack, life's not the same when you spend your day loading that 100 ton.
Unfortunately for each and every one of us, we all lost friends in the docks from the absolute lack of health and safety. It became ridiculous. As I opened South Bank, which was a container terminal, and they brought in a rule that you have to wear steel toe cap shoes and a heavy hat in case a container fell on you. So from the ridiculous to the sublime.
But then a manager did do that. I walked along the docks with a manager, John Malherby, and he'd just been appointed as D-man because he had great, as an academic I suppose, he was the best thing since Jesus. But we're walking along and I'm showing him, you know, this is this place, that's that place and all the rest of it. And there was a container of fish with 34 ton in it. And the bottom, as the crane man lifted it up, the bottom fell out, and because they were frozen, the cartons together, this block came down and splashed. And John, being the new man and all the rest of it, he was going to tell us what to do. He said, "There you go, Paddy. Isn't it lucky we had our helmets on?" That's true. That's not hearsay. That's true.
I was telling you before, I'm gifted for putting my feet into it, and I started in the docks and it was a bit of a mouth. And I heard the story over and over about a docker walking a coal boat, and he broke his leg, told in more than one spot. And a coal boat could last 5 days, and this was the last day. So the foreman, rather than unhook this major steel bucket that Paddy was talking about earlier, to allow a stretcher come into the ship, the foreman said, "No, we'll carry on and we'll wait till the ship is finished." So the story went that the man was put into the wing for 2 to 3 hours, screaming in agony, waiting for the ship to finish. And then when the ship finished, the ambulance was on standby. A man came in on the hook with the stretcher. The man was put on the stretcher and brought to a hospital. And I was saying to this foreman, what type of a fucking human being does that to another human being? And he said, "Declan, you're speaking to him." So I had to learn to keep my mouth shut a bit. So the working conditions, to say the least, were dangerous.
The health and safety was a big issue with dockers, and particularly with people who didn't know what they were stepping into. When you go onto the dock, you go onto a building site, you have to have certificates and all this type of thing. And anybody could just walk onto the docks on any day and just go to a job and be expected to get through the day in a safe. But the docks wasn't a safe working environment. And a lot of men throughout the years, there were a lot of fatal accidents. And they were all kind of pushed under the carpet. It was kind of an accepted thing. Health and safety wasn't a big issue. As you know, you weren't going out in the morning time thinking of health and safety. You were just going out to do your work. A lot depended on the crane men in a lot of circumstances. You had good crane men, you had bad crane men, the same as good drivers and bad drivers. And you were dependent on those guys over your head to do their job in a safe fashion and to single out on the deck to make sure that you were working in a safe environment all the time. But there, as Nick said and Paddy said, there was a lot of incidents that probably could have been avoided, and then would have been probably still around today if certain incidents hadn't have happened. There was one particular one, it's not in the recent past. You may remember in the Borden and Mona shed. They called it, there's a shed down there that exports peat moss, and they call it the Borden and Mona shed. But you had a machine in the shed and a machine inside of the ship, and the crane was thrown into peat moss, and the machine in the hatch was working so fast that it went afire. And the superintendent, who wasn't too long on the docks, seen this happening and panicked, ran into the shed to get a hose, not thinking about the machine that was working in the shed. And the machine that was working in the shed had this big shovel in front of it, so his visibility, there was no one allowed into the shed while this machine was working. But with the panic, the superintendent ran in to get the hose to put the fire out as he thought on the machine in the hatch, and unfortunately lost his head. And that was just one incident of many that happened on the docks, and that, you know, it was a very unsafe place to work.
And he was the man. He was the man there to ensure that absolutely no one, other than the driver, would be in that shed. So it can happen to
It was
anyone.
unfortunate what happened. That happened in the night time. I was the foreman, and Michael Murray was the man's name. Very nice man. He was the superintendent in charge. I was on the ship, and Paul Kelly was the driver of the machine inside. It did a D4, and it done two things. As you know, peat moss is very light. So if you fill this room with peat moss, there wouldn't be much more the ship going away. So what it did was, the D4 with the weight of it would compact. As the stuff was coming in, the man in the shed with a big Volvo would throw it into this conveyor belt, which would go into the ship and form a pile, and the D4 would then flatten it, but while distributing it even, he would be compacting it, and therefore you would get, I suppose, 5 or 6 times the weight that he would if it was just getting thrown in. So he was compacting as well. So it went on fire, as Paddy said, and normally what I would have done, or any of the lads here would have done, would be, we'd get on the radio and say to the driver, John, you know, something happening here, stop. Or we'd stay at the door and we'd wait till he's going by and wave to him or whatever. But it was, I wanted to tie the two things in together about the button. That was another reason why the button and the organisation and the registration of the Dockers came about, because there was people on the docks. To give you some example, the ambulance was known as the Dockers taxi. That's the truth. Now it was used for other things as well, but I mean, I can hear them laughing behind me. If you got hurt, I'm taking a mickey now, I suppose. If May was hurt, and she was going up and saying, I'll go up with her, right? And of course, I might have stuff on me. I get in, and when I got to the book bridge, I'd say to the ambulance, hold it, and get off. But no, on the serious side, the health and safety. The reason the health and safety was so lax, if you like, the stevedore, who was the stevedore? They used to call him private, and there was a man called Joey Jones came down, and he was talking about privates. And I remember saying to him at one of the meetings, you're talking about privateers here, you're not talking about private people. These people didn't own cranes, they didn't own sheds, they didn't own ships, they didn't own the men, and when the men were idle, every taxpayer in the country was paying for them. This guy was just making money. It was great. Now when it came to the health and safety side, the gear, like the ropes or the wires, right now, if you went down to the docks right now and there was wires being used for whatever, on the side of that there would be SWL, safe working load, 3 ton. And that would mean that wherever, if there's 2 boys on each end, that'd be 3 ton, 3 ton. So if you lifted it like that, it would be 3 ton, and if you put it like that, you could lift 6 ton. But you would know because it's on it. Now, these people robbed most of their gear. When the ship came in, it went out light because they took whatever gear they could get, they stole it. But there was no safety, there was no regulation or anything else. So the poor buggers that were there, men were killed putting stuff into a rope, which didn't know how much were in it. Let's say you put 3 ton into a rope. and it was only a 1 ton rope. And that's how the accidents were happening. Sorry about that.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's just, so there was,
Sorry,
yeah.
sorry, can you explain about the asbestos?
Yes.
That's it, yeah. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was very unlucky because I saw documentation and I should have photocopied it. So, asbestos came in loose into all ports in Europe. And then, this is my opinion,
In bag sector.
yeah, bags,
8 stone bags.
in England, they realised that asbestos and handling asbestos was very dangerous. And I believe that the importation of asbestos into Dublin shot up. And it came in bags, it was taken off the ships, and then it was shipped back into England in containers to reduce the danger. So I believe that the Port Authority and other companies were aware of the danger. So as it transpires, a number of dockers were diagnosed with asbestosis, and a number of dockers have died from asbestosis. And I will be aware of the court cases and the different things. So there was also a situation that you could have asbestosis and it didn't adversely affect you. And the case that I would be made aware of was a docker coming across the East Link Bridge on his bike, fell off the bike, got a bit of a shock, and died soon afterwards from asbestosis. So they said he was carrying it, it may never have kind of activated and killed him, but because he'd fallen off the bike, this had triggered it. So there's been loads of cases taken. So the courts have taken the view that if a dock worker dies and it's on his death cert that it's asbestosis, that the widow or the family can claim. But even dockers who are suffering with asbestosis and the side effects, to the best of my knowledge, never won a case to say this is directly related to the fact that I worked asbestos in the whole of the ship. There is a recent precedent, a docker that died a number of years ago. His family took a case and it was thrown out of court because they said, I don't know what the technical term is, they waited too long to make the claim. The statute of limitations had run out. But they've appealed it and they've won the appeal. So there's a case before the courts as we speak of this particular family claiming it. So yes, they've had a mini victory with the courts actually hearing it, and I'd love to think that they win it, but I've no way of knowing. But I think it was a disgrace, and the men themselves were totally oblivious to the danger. The men have told me that when a bag burst open, they kind of make the asbestos
Came
into
down just like snow.
snow, yeah.
You know, just
Thrown up on
Make
other.
snowballs.
They make kind of snowballs out of it and throw them at each other because they didn't realise it.
There's one for to drive it, one for to guide, four to fill it in the darkness inside. And you'll work like a miner, shoveling coal, scraping the floor deep down in the hold. I'm telling you, Jack, life's not the same when you spend your day loading that 100